Good morning, everybody. This is Aurora Culpo here with Barely Filtered. Oh my gosh, I have such an update, but I want to be mindful how I explain it. I had such a meet cute. Somebody approached my manager about potentially doing some kind of like business deal with me. And strangely, I was not expecting this, but I'm meeting a lot of guys just by like my algorithm. What I do is I'll find people that I think are really interesting, that I want to talk to, that are doing amazing things. And then I invite them on my podcast. And some of them happen to be single. So it's like, I'm not looking. Everybody knows that. But this one actually came for me, not in a creepy way. Legitimately saw something that I'm doing in my work and it matched up with something he wants to create. So he messaged my manager and we did a Zoom and we really hit it off. And then of course, you know, I always take it one step further. I'm a little aggressive that way, but like that sometimes like I just don't have the patience for like, what are your intentions? Is this a meet cute, or do you really want to do this business thing with me? And he fully was like, no, I came to you for this job. Like, I'm going to have to report you to HR. This is sexual harassment. Not really. He was open to it, but he was like, okay. I mean, like, no, like literally he was like, no, I was not interested in dating you. But now that you've brought it up, let's go on a date. Why not? And I just happened to be going to the city he lives in for something totally different. And we went on a date. Okay, so I started doing this dating coaching. As you guys have heard before, I had my friend on. Her name's Christine Pate. We actually did an episode with her. She is a dating coach. And she has these strict 7 rules. 3 of the rules she makes up. They're non-negotiable. They're part of her program. And then the other 4 you come up with yourself. So I'll read you what my last 4 were, and then I'll tell you what her first 3 are. Okay. Number 1 of her strict 7 dating rules. He must make you feel safe on all levels. So that's financially, emotionally, sexually, mentally. Like, I've struggled myself with like the financial thing of just being like, well, I don't want to only go for rich guys. I don't only want to go for guys who have like a really impressive job, because I feel like then you're a gold digger. And also like if you really want true love, like it doesn't matter how much money somebody makes. This is my opinion. But after dating a couple guys who live on their friends' couches, it actually does matter, because you need to feel safe. Like you need to feel like you have the freedom to be able to do what you want to do. You need to feel like you are safe financially with somebody, because that's security. You know, we need a home. We need to make sure that our future, we're able to afford things like healthcare and food and all the things. It's a primal instinct. We need to feel safe financially. So that's her number 1, must feel safe on all levels. Number 2, he must be pursuing you. This one seems a little obvious, but you'd be surprised. There's a couple guys who, I'm not going to lie, there's a few guys who I was like, I pick you. And they were like, like, you know, for whatever reason. And then, of course, we take it personally. I went on a couple dates. Of course, there were mixed messages from these people. I wouldn't go on a date with somebody who wasn't interested in me. I mean, obviously, they asked me out. I was interested, and then they said they were interested, but then you end up finding out that things are just messy. Like maybe they still are into their ex-wife. That was one of them. Maybe they're really not wanting what you're wanting. They're not wanting a relationship because they are having a midlife crisis, or they're like in their single era, whatever. There's so many different reasons why a guy might not be pursuing you, or a girl might not be pursuing you. And you got to recognize them. And you also have to just kind of take the hint, because sometimes it's a subtle hint, and people aren't always bold enough to just be like, this isn't what I want. Or maybe they want you on the back burner because they want to still be able to hook up. That caused me a lot of pain. I'm not going to lie. Earlier this year, trying to get further along with somebody who was really putting the brakes on. And I was like, what is your intention? Like, we hooked up, we went on these dates. I thought we had a great time. And ultimately, he really just wasn't looking for something. But he wasn't being forthright with that information. So sometimes you have to read between the lines for number 2 in figuring out, is he pursuing you or is he not pursuing you? Is he keeping you on the back burner? Number 3, your future goals and timelines must line up. This is a big one because if you think you can change people's mind like me, you can't. And even if you are able to kind of strong arm people into thinking your idea is a good idea, there's always that element of resentment because people need to come up with the idea themselves about whether or not they want kids, about whether or not they want to get married again, about whether or not they want to be in a relationship anytime soon. These are important things to come to terms with in the beginning because you don't want to waste your time and then be disappointed when you find out something very fundamental like, I don't ever want to get married again, or I don't want to have kids. Okay, so those are her top 3. And then I had to come up with my last 4. So my number 5 was that they need to be successful at what they do and generous. So I'm not talking about generous, like give me money and you need to be rich. I'm talking about like sexually generous. I'm talking about generous with their time. Like, there is nothing worse than somebody who's not a giver. And personally for me, like maybe that's not something that you would put on your list, but for me, you need to be somebody who's a giver because I find that to be in my feminine, I need to be open to receiving, and you can't be open to receiving if somebody's kind of stingy with their time or resources or connections or for me, it's also linked to this mentality of lack and competition. You need to be generous and you need to be successful at what you do. Personally, for me, I need somebody who's successful at what they do because I don't want to be there for the journey. I don't know that you can have your judgments about it. This is just what I know about me. I don't find it sexy to be with somebody who's up and coming, who's still scrapping, who maybe it's going to pan out, maybe it's not. They have these big ideas and they want, I feel like I've dated a lot of like big ideas guys. Like, you know, they have this great idea for a startup or a great idea for a business. I love an ideas guy. I love an ideas guy for a friend, but as a person who's also not really a see it through, follow it through in it with the nitty gritty details. I need somebody like that to balance me out because I think maybe I'm an ideas girl and 2 ideas people together, you're not getting anywhere. I mean, maybe you are, maybe you're going to hit it big, but I just need somebody to balance that and be somebody who's like, you know, really honed their craft, followed through on educating themselves about what they want to do and create in life and have some success in it. Because I find that sexy. Okay, number 7 has to be, this is the one I came up with. Number 6 has to be ready and free to be in a relationship. So nothing complicated. The last guy I was talking to, I told you guys about him. I was like, kind of sounds like maybe he's still with the baby mama. Like, all signs are pointing to yes. He's telling me no. All I have to go by is his word. But like she's posting pictures of him on her Instagram saying, I love you. And it kind of looks like they might have kissed in that video, but like kind of cut out. There was just a lot of things where I was like, this feels complicated. So go with your instinct on that. Number 6, open to self-development and spirituality. So love my ex-husband, but he never wanted to change. He's happy with the way he is. He doesn't want to change anything. He doesn't want to read any books about it. And I'm always trying to better myself and which can be annoying for somebody who's like, why do you want to change? Everything's good right now. So I need somebody who's kind of on my page with that because I'm always going to be bringing in different like new spiritual woo-woo stuff that I want somebody to listen to me talk about, quite frankly. And also like come to these retreats with me. Like, let's do a tantric thing. Let's go like, I don't know, talk about our past traumas in a tent in the Palisades somewhere and look at crystals. I need somebody who's going to be able to do that with me. So that's my number 6. And then my number 7 has to want to get married because I want to get married and I want to get married in the next few years or like now that I met somebody, maybe like, I don't know, a couple months. We'll see. don't want to upstage my sister or anything, but June 29th is looking like a nice date for me. I might have to just get married on that day and really upstage her. So anyway, I made this list of my strict 7. Not even kidding. 2 days later, I go on this date with this guy. Mind you, one of her rules for my dating coach is that no sex before either commitment, 5 dates, or 3 months. We committed to each other on the first date. So there was lots of sex, which was amazing. And it also checked out all these boxes for me because very generous. So we had an amazing weekend. And of course, because nothing is easy in my life, he lives all the way on the other side of the country. But I'm going to make it work because I don't take no for an answer. And that's a technicality. I mean, the problem with being a co-parent that's dating is my children need access to both their mom and their dad. So Mike and I, my ex-husband, come as a package deal. But this is the first time that I've ever given my time to somebody. Mind you, we've only known each other for a few weeks. But this is the first time I've ever given my time to somebody where I don't feel guilty taking my time away from my children to go on a date or be with a man, which usually I'm like, it kind of makes me feel sick inside to be like, oh, mommy's on a date, can't play with you. Like, I don't know. I always want to choose my children above anything all the time. So they're always my number one priority. But in this situation, I don't mind prioritizing my relationship with this guy because I know my children would be so lucky to have him as an example because he's such a good person and like on every single level. And seriously, I could cry. This is I'm crazy, guys. This is insane. But like, I feel like I could cry. It's like the cutest love story I've ever, it's my own life, but I feel like I'm watching it on a movie. So last week also I went to the Mart Collective in Venice, which is this antique store. And I went there and I always just buy like random glassware to my collection, and I'm a little bit of a hoarder, but I like old paintings and things like that. Anyway, so I went in, I took a picture of this painting that I love, and it's of this cheetah. But I was like, I don't know, I'm not gonna buy it. I've actually gone in a few times and looked at it, and I got them to mark the price down a little bit, but I was like, okay, I'm not gonna get it. It's fine. But I took a picture of it and I put it on my Instagram, and I was like, this is so awesome. Like, I'm gonna have to come back for this sometime. I get back last night, you guys, he like, first of all, he lives across the country. He had somebody go to the Mart Collective in Venice, buy this painting and deliver it at my door. Like, is that not the cutest thing in the entire world? I'm going to cry again. I don't know. I also just got my period, so I'm like a little emotional, but like, I don't think anybody's ever done anything that nice for me. Which is, it's just so thoughtful. And like, it's not flowers. And I know that like, you know, some other girl didn't get the same cheetah painting because there's only one of them. That's a reference to when Dr. Love sent me and his wife the same flowers for Mother's Day or like Valentine's Day or something. Oh, I'm just like so loving life right now. This is so fun. It's so fun to have a crush on somebody, but it's also I'm trying to really just like be grounded and centered and be like okay with whatever the outcome is. It's more than anything, it's really exciting to know that there's people out there that are good people and kind and generous and that do check off all the boxes. Like, even if it doesn't work out with this guy, which like it's not an option, but even if it doesn't, like, I still feel happy about it. I still feel happy knowing that something like that exists out there, which is really nice. So I'm just having a great time right now. And I'm actually going back to see him on Thursday, and then I'm for like a 2-day trip, and then coming back, and then he's going to be out here in a couple weeks. So long distance sucks, but with the excitement of having a crush on somebody, there's always that like anxiety of like, I don't know. What if it doesn't work out? This is scary. Like, it's a little scary, but it's also exciting. But love the thrill. I love the thrill. But also, I also need to be careful because we had Scott Lyons in here last week talking about addiction to drama. And I don't want to be addicted to the honeymoon phase. Also, Dr. Amen was saying, like, it's an ADHD trait, especially for women, to be addicted to the honeymoon phase because obviously I'm flooded with dopamine right now. So I'm doing all the things that I know that are going to keep me level-headed, grounded. I'm not drinking right now. I'm going to my yoga. I'm doing my meditations. I need to be in a very even-keeled state because I can't let myself get too high on this because we know it's not sustainable and it crashes and burns. But I think for once, it's not the guy who's going to crash and burn, but who's going to blow the situation up, which puts even more pressure on me to be the best version of myself, which is a great start to a relationship. Moving on to our guest of the day, I'm so excited to introduce Kevin Quinn. If you are either my age or maybe a little younger, you actually might recognize him as a child star on the Disney Channel from the original series Bunked. That was from 2015 to 2017. So I guess a little bit more like Gen Z generation. So I recognized him immediately. Actually, I met him at the Lemons Foundation charity of pickleball event. So the Lemons Foundation is a foundation that raises money for mental illness, all different types of mental illness. And I started talking to Kevin. I recognize his face, I think, from TV, but what followed was way more interesting than a child star from the Disney Channel, although that is very cool. Kevin actually has borderline personality disorder. And as a fan of abnormal psychology and serial killers, Dateline, things like that, like I'm like, I've heard this term so many times, but it's always linked with like a very nefarious, malicious, scary type of a person. I've never heard somebody be like, I have borderline personality disorder. I don't know whether or not it's because they don't want to admit to it or the diagnosis maybe doesn't come very often. I don't know, but the only time I've ever heard of this personality disorder is when describing people who have been criminals. So, and of course, I'm ignorant to what this personality disorder is for the vast majority of people who have it. And so I was so interested when he said that. And I was like, wow, you seem like such a nice, normal, collected, kind, and very personable type of person. Like how in my brain, the two don't reconcile. And so that's why I really wanted to bring him on, because I think it's so important to break the stigmas for these type of personality disorders, labels, in order just to have more insight into how people can live with them and live very happy, productive lives. So I'm so happy to have him on. I'm going to shut up before I say something stupid because clearly I don't know anything about this, but I want him to explain to us what it's like living with this and how he's been able to have such a successful career while dealing with these very serious mental struggles. So thank you so much for being with us, Kevin. I have Kevin Quinn in today, and I'm so excited because you and I met at a pickleball tournament, actually, which if you didn't know, racket sports are really good for your brain and increased longevity, evidently. Were you there for Dr. Amen or for the Lemons Foundation, or how did you?
I think I was there. I think it was Tay Lautner who reached out to my publicist, and that's how I got connected to the event. Yeah,
so her and her husband run the Lemons Foundation.
That's right.
Which raises money for people with mental illness or mental any kind, like this. I wish we had like a different word, because like mental illness, disorder. I don't know. It all sounds. It's like we all have a little bit of something in our brains that could be optimized. Some of us struggle more than others. And I know you have an incredible story, but right off the bat, I think you were like, hi, I'm Kevin. I'm like, what's your story? You're like, I have borderline personality disorder. And I was like, and I was just like, wow, I've never met anybody who said that. Like there's such a stigma around it because you only hear it on like when people are like in jail or like an institution or something, because it's how it's manifested in a bad way. But you're an example of somebody who's uber successful and
thank you
living with this disorder. Does it go away?
Believe it or not, it does.
Really?
Yeah. It's one of the few mental health disorders that goes into remission, and that's where I'm at now.
That's amazing. So it can live dormant in your...
It's not so much that it lives dormant. It's that you have it from the time that you first start showing symptoms until the time you get treated. So treatment consists of going away to rehab and doing an extensive like month-long therapy program. And then after that doing, I think it's like 2 months of intensive outpatient care, which I did. And then I did another over a year of dialectical behavioral therapy.
Okay.
DBT therapy, which is like the #1 treatment for borderline personality disorder.
So in rehab, is that like talk therapy that you're doing there, and that's helpful?
Yeah, it is. It's a combination of process group, talk therapy, private talk therapy, group therapy, psychiatry. And believe it or not, a huge part of it is education, mental health education. So you have a class schedule for the 30 days that you're there. And you might spend your Monday afternoon going to, dealing with interpersonal relationships class, or the next day you're in having effective communication with family members class, So it's like this, and they have they have actual professors from the University of Arizona in Tucson who do part-time at the rehab
That's
facility.
crazy. That's crazy. I think in like this day and age, a lot of people feel like you need like therapy like that wouldn't help, that you need something that's going to seriously alter the chemicals in your brain, that in the form of a pill or in the form of something, I don't know, something that's a little bit more intense. But it sounds like education can be a huge
it's
tool.
huge.
Do you mind saying where you went?
Yeah, it's called Sierra Tucson.
Sierra Tucson?
Yeah, there have been quite a few. I mean, I guess it's like an industry hotspot. I know like Ringo Starr went there, Pete Davidson got treated there. And I had just kind of heard of it from my treatment team at UCLA that it's been effective and they have a good understanding of people like in the entertainment industry and stuff. So that's
interesting because it is oftentimes our most creative kind of change maker, people who are suffering so deeply and we never know.
Yeah.
And was that I know that men specifically, like in their early 20s, there can be kind of like an onset of something like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, whatever it might be. Do you feel like there was something that triggered it, or that you have always had this?
I think I've always had a version of it. When I was 8, I actually had Tourette syndrome. So I had tics. And it started when I had strep throat when I was a kid, and I saw a neurologist because like 2 weeks after I had strep throat, I started getting like these shoulder twitches.
Wow.
Yeah. And they did like a CAT scan and they said that there was evidence of the streptococcus infection in my brainstem, I guess.
That is so crazy because the same thing with, do you know Jason Waller, I met him at the Amen Foundation too, and he met Dr. Amen because he had all these OCD symptoms
I had that too,
that were like, and then he turned into this wild addiction. And when they scanned his brain, they found out that it was like a strep throat from when he was a kid.
Yeah. So something very similar happened to me. And so apparently like the strep attacked this part of the brain called the basal ganglia, which I don't know too much about. I'm not a doctor, but it started giving me like these vocal tics, clearing my throat a lot, these motor tics, shoulder twitches. I started having OCD symptoms, like obsessive compulsive thoughts, hand washing, the typical like OCD stuff. And then I also had like new hyperactivity in the form of ADHD. And so that lasted until I was maybe 16 or 17. And then my symptoms started to die out a little bit. And I guess I was like growing out of it. And then
from 8 to 16?
Yeah.
That's a long time to deal with something like that.
It was terrible. It was really, really difficult. And I got made fun of in school for it. And I had to like constantly cover myself and like come up with excuses as to why I was like twitching and stuff. Like, oh yeah, I just had an itch. Like, stop laughing. It was horrible.
Oh.
Yeah. But eventually it got better. And then by the time I was 19, I started having something different. And I started having like these I started acting really impulsively. And I started struggling in my relationships. And I just couldn't hold relationships of any kind. Like friendships were really difficult for me. Romantic relationships were even more difficult. And eventually, like, I just got to a place where I like could no longer relate to other people. And I felt like I was truly the only one who understood myself And I felt really alone by that. And I started like having this sense of self and my identity that was sort of not in line with who I wanted to be or who I thought I was. And it would shift from one day to the other. Like one day I thought I was like this really great person who could achieve a lot and was successful and compassionate and loyal and all these values. And then the next day I would be like, I'm not compassionate. I'm not loyal. I'm a dirty scumbag, like horrible thoughts. And like, but I genuinely believed it. So it's like my sense of self would constantly shift.
Interesting.
And that is a huge sign of borderline personality disorder, a distorted sense of self. And that manifests in behavior. So for instance, my struggle with who I was and my identity and my relationships would manifest in impulsive behavior or angry outbursts of emotion and these episodes. And then it was just even more detrimental to my health and my relationships and my life. So we thought it was originally bipolar disorder because we thought it was just like a manic
Sounds
episode.
like it, yeah.
Right? So I went to the hospital and they put me on like these bipolar meds, and believe it or not, they did help.
Like lithium?
They put me on an antipsychotic called Seroquel,
Okay.
but it did help. I take lithium now, but
Okay.
it's only, that came later.
Okay.
But yeah, and so I started I started taking these medications, and I felt like, oh great, now I have this medication to fall back on. My life's starting to improve. And for a time it did. I was functional again. And
Did you feel numb or did you feel just stable, normal?
stable.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a period of stability, and it lasted for about 4 years. And then when I turned, I think I was 24, I'm a musician and I was on tour living on a bus for 3 months. And I don't know if like something happened to me and I just felt super alone and I don't know, but the pressure maybe, of like, it was a big tour, it was an arena tour and I was getting up there every night performing in front of 20,000 people.
Wow.
And feeling like I was struggling with a sense of self, of who I was, but then having to get on stage every night and see all these like fans like sort of validating a version of me that they thought I was when I didn't know who I was.
Yeah, you don't know who you are, but you have 20,000 people who are trying to tell you who you are. It's like, but I don't feel like I'm that. I mean, I think people who would not identify with any mental illness would also struggle with that, as we've seen from, so many artists and famous people having kind of identity crises.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's how it was for me. And so, I think it's weird, like, seeing the crowd and every night. And I think they sort of have this version of like, oh, he's like a celebrity, or he's up there performing and he's talented, or he's so nice and kind. But like deep down feeling like, well, these people don't really know me because I don't know myself. That was the struggle. And so I think that sort of was like a tipping point doing that for 3 months. I got back to LA, and my girlfriend who I cohabitate with, she was like, oh, you met her, Kelby.
She's so beautiful and so sweet.
Thanks.
So you've been with her since, because was this recently that you're talking about, or when?
This was about 2 years ago.
Okay.
Today's I'm 27 today. Actually.
Happy birthday!
Thanks.
Oh my God, you came on
Thanks.
your birthday.
Yeah, I want to spend it with you guys.
It's Gemini season, right? Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
My son is a Gemini and he is my favorite. Well, I haven't.
We have a
stigma. There's a stigma. I love Gemini. The personality of a Gemini is known for being like super interested in a lot of different things, like very creative. You're never bored around a Gemini. It's an air sign. They're light. They're fun. I personally love a Gemini. And happy birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
How old are you?
I'm 27 today.
27 today.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, this all started when I think I was 24. But like I said, like I came home and she started noticing that I think I was exhibiting a behavior called dissociation, where I was like zoning out in the middle of conversations, and which is also a huge hallmark of BPD. And I would sort of, because the emotions and life gets to be so much that it becomes easier for the person struggling with BPD to just check out of their bodies entirely and not participate in life. So it can be a really detrimental behavior, dissociation. And she started noticing it, and she was like, Kevin, you're not responding to me. Like, I feel like you're not present. And I feel like I'm not connecting with you. And we struggled for a bit in our relationship for those couple weeks. And she was like, I think something else is going on. I'm going to take you to the hospital. And she took me to the hospital. Yeah. And the weird thing about dissociation is it causes you to shake. So I would like have these episodes of shaking. Like,
it's almost a blessing that there's an outward symptom though, because otherwise how would you know?
Yeah. So she took me to the hospital. I checked in. I spent like a week at UCLA hospital. And they said, we think we know what's going on with you, but we can't treat it here. I was like, well, what do you mean you can't treat it here? This is a hospital. And they said, this requires a little bit more extensive treatment. So we're going to send you off to residential treatment. And that's when I found out I was going to Arizona. And I had just been on tour for 3 months. I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's like the last thing you want to do.
Exactly. So, you know, I hop on the plane. Kelby flies out with me, which was like so sweet for her. She literally just like dropped me off and flew out with me. She's the best. And then I found myself in rehab, and that experience completely changed my life.
Wow.
It was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life, but the rewards and like the functionality and the quality of life I've had since then that I wouldn't have been able to guess was happening while I was there completely changed my life.
Wow. And it's like a quality of life that, do you remember ever having experienced this type of quality of life ever in your life before?
No.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
I feel like the world would be a better place if everyone went away to treatment.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I'm like, rehab sounds fun. Like
it's an opportunity to work on yourself.
Yeah.
Like,
I went to the Hoffman
demons.
Institute. That was my
Gotcha.
kind of, which is not even anywhere. I mean, it's 1 week, but no cell phones. You were there for how long?
A month. Yeah.
A month. And you were doing like intensive, all sorts of therapy. And was everybody in that treatment center struggling with something similar?
A lot of them were. There were some people with BPD. It was a hodgepodge. I met a lot of people. I met someone with multiple personality disorder where she would walk around campus with a different identity, not remembering who people were that she was talking to the day before. Kind of like that movie Split.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty crazy.
Do you know if she was successfully treated there? Like, was she good at the
most
end?
people, I think they are pretty successful. They're pretty good at these places.
That is so crazy.
I also met, drug addicts, meth addicts, heroin addicts.
Yeah, that's so. Knowing me, like I'm such a. How do I say this with being nice to myself? But I feel like if I was struggling with something like that, like I would be a drug addict. Like I would have turned to drugs by now. I don't know why, because it's just like the escapism for me. It's like, I don't know, like just in my early years, because I've struggled with just things like depression, anxiety, ADHD, and I always would turn to a pill to be like, I feel anxious, I'm gonna take Xanax. I feel like I'm tired, I'm going to take an Adderall. And like, you learn pretty quickly that these things only work for a short period of time and ultimately make it worse if you're not a doctor and if you're not taking it per doctor's recommendations, which I never did. So kudos to you for not turning to, hardcore drugs. I'm sure we're in LA, you're famous. I'm sure you have access if you wanted to.
I suppose. I mean, yeah, I appreciate that. And I quit drinking proactively even before I went to treatment because I guess I was smart enough to know that like anytime I drank, I was like, this isn't helping.
No.
So I stopped drinking. Occasionally I dabble with an edible, but I never do more than 5 milligrams.
Yeah.
Because I don't like the feeling of being high. Really.
Yeah.
It's just like to take the edge off. But I don't condone that to anyone struggling with mental health. Like I probably shouldn't be doing that, admittedly.
Yeah. I had Dr. Amen on and I'm like, pick one. Which can I do? Alcohol, mushrooms, or weed? And he was like, none. Exactly. They're all bad. And
he's right.
Ugh. I'm like, just give me one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's true. And I mean, candidly, I've struggled with like, do I want alcohol to be part of my life? And it is true. It's like, it just really doesn't make anything better overall. In the moment, it's nice, but then it really does. It raises your baseline cortisol and makes you overall more anxious in your daily life. If you're doing great and you don't have any kind of mental health problems, I've never met anybody like that, then have your alcohol. But I'm with you. Alcohol doesn't add value, really. How long have you been? I don't want to call it so. What do you call yourself sober? Like I have a hard time describing it to people.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, it technically is.
Yeah.
But it always comes with the connotation that I struggled with it.
Right.
And that's not the case.
And people, I feel like that's that people picture like, oh, you must have been a disaster. And like, you know, the throwing up in bars, or you had to go to
sometimes the reason why I don't mind using the word is because to say that I'm sober implies that alcohol played a negative impact in my life. And it did.
And it
caused me to be less functional and struggle with my mental health.
Yeah.
So in that way, I'm in recovery, which is why I don't mind saying that I'm sober. But sometimes I'll just say, you know, I quit drinking.
Yeah. That's interesting. I don't know why this is something that I want to go back to, but Tourette syndrome is so rare. Is that always like a precursor to something like BPD? Or
interestingly enough, the same part of the brain, the basal ganglia that affects Tourette syndrome, is part of like emotional dysregulation.
Interesting.
So I think it's possible it just like evolved into BPD.
Yeah. Okay. So now you went through your rehab and you are on medication that's helping you. You said lithium.
Yeah, I take lithium, Latuda, Lexapro, and Gabapentin.
So you feel like your medication is working for you.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And then I have to say, because I see that you're wearing this beautiful crucifix, you have a faith that you practice.
I do. I'm not a zealous Christian by any means.
Right. You live in LA. You wouldn't survive here if you were.
Exactly. So, you know, I always tell people like it's more to have something to believe in. Yeah. And that's pretty much the extent of it.
Okay. So do you feel like that's played a role in your mental health, or?
It has.
Yeah.
It has. Especially at my lowest low when I was in rehab. Like I had a lot of conversations with God. I know it sounds like super like
no, not in this
the
space.
Body of Christ. But again, like it's not to be like zealous, but it's just like, you know, I believe in God, and I occasionally like to talk to him, and sometimes I don't like to talk to him. And sometimes I get really angry and fed up with my life, and I'm like, oh, I don't really feel like talking to God. But then other times I'm like, well, this would be a good time to really lean on my faith, and then I will send a prayer too.
Yeah.
That's worked for me, you know.
I love that also too, just because like, not that what you struggled with is the same as addiction, which I talk a lot about here, just with like kind of my own struggles with addictive type behavior, and then other people who have struggled with substances. There's always that element of like a higher power that just basically recognizes our own limitations, and that we're not in control, you know, because I think it's tough when we have symptoms, we're struggling in some way, and we think that we can fix it ourselves with the same mind that created the problem to begin with, you know, which is just so debilitating and can leave us in a spiral of despair. And unfortunately, with so many young kids like committing suicide lately, I just think it's a message that kids need to be aware of earlier, that like, if you're feeling a certain way, you're getting bullied, or, you know, you have to, there has to be more resources for kids, you know, because
absolutely,
it's so sad that you had to struggle with that from ages 8 to 14, which is like the worst years of your life to not feel like you fit in already. Yeah.
So a couple things. I think, first of all, like the beautiful thing about where I went to rehab was there were a lot of people from all different walks of life. I mean, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, you know, but they still teach you like things like the serenity prayer, like God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that's like your mantra for the time that you're there. And no matter where you come from, no matter where you come from, everybody is like preaching that mantra, because it's not about who your God is. It's about the fact that like you're leaning on a higher power, as you said, to get through the darkest time of your life. And they want to reinforce that in rehab, because they know that some people are so low that they have nothing else to lean on but their faith. So it makes sense to me why they like want you to believe in something, and it works. So I think like in a way they condition you to just have hope.
100%. And you know, I think a really sciencey mind people are like, the faith, the whatever, it's woo woo. But the fact of the matter is that AA works. It's actually the only thing that has consistently worked to get people sober. And you're saying that also they're using it in rehab centers for people with mental disorders or mental illness. So whatever you want to call it, like it actually works.
Yeah.
So there's no contesting that.
Yeah, and what you said about like our young generations, I was actually a realization I had in rehab, believe it or not. I while I was there, I was like, I had this completely profound realization that like I found myself in the limelight in the entertainment industry and living this life as an actor and musician, and I felt like, oh my God, like at the end of the day, I love it. Like I fell into acting because I loved theater and I, loved the craft growing up. But like when I die, like that's not going to matter. Like what matters is like the difference that I make in like people's lives. And so I thought to myself while I was in rehab, I was like, this thing that I'm going through right now, like, and I'm only 24. I mean, imagine the people who are going through it at 15, 16, and there are people that young going through it. And I thought to myself, I was like, when I get out of here, I want to do something about it. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I have the ability, the resources, the time. We'll find out, but I'm going to at least try.
Yeah.
And so I started working on something called Luminosity, which I had this idea for like a company that provided mental health resources to Gen Z.
Yeah.
And we launched as a podcast, and we record our podcast, and then we like different parts of what the business would look like. One of the products was called Masterminds with a Z to appeal to Gen Z.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay, I like it.
But imagine like you ever heard of Masterclass? Like those So imagine like a Masterclass product where people can go onto the website for free and see like videos of the people they respect or admire, like say Selena Gomez, who's open about having bipolar, and it's a masterclass of Selena Gomez on navigating the ins and outs of bipolar disorder, so that these young kids who look up to her can be like, whoa, like I'm learning
it's
something.
Groundbreaking.
Yeah.
It really, like sometimes that's really all it takes is just to know that like you're not alone and that someone else has experienced it. They know what you're feeling and they got to the other side of it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So Luminosity, it's your podcast?
It's a podcast right now, and then we're in the process of transitioning to it's looking like it'll be a nonprofit at this point. We did conceptualize a for-profit model, but that's only to keep us in business, and the idea being we would never charge the consumer. It would just be like advertising and sponsorships that would keep us running, because I would feel wrong about charging a consumer. Well, if you want these resources, we got to charge you. That's not right.
That's not part of the giving back model. But I mean, you got to keep it up and running. Okay, that's amazing. So Luminosity, we can find that on like Spotify, Apple.
Yeah.
And what do you talk about on that podcast?
Mental health.
Mental health. Amazing. Yeah. And then this product, the Mastermind product, this is still in the works.
Still in the works.
Okay.
Yeah, very much. So we're in the process of getting funding, whether that's in the form of grants or donations. That's kind of where I'm
throw
at
a pickleball event.
For real.
I'll show up.
I actually
I'll bring every rich person I know to donate money.
There you go. I love it. Thank you. No, but I'm hoping that it will be an impactful thing for a lot of young people. And if anything, it's just, I hope that once it goes live, that like it helps them in the way that I wish I had helped when I was in it.
Oh, I love that so much. I actually think it's such perfect timing too. I saw the most horrible meme, or not meme, what was like on Instagram, something about like some 10-year-old that was just relentlessly bullied at school and he ended up, ending his own life. But I think just doing things like this, like you coming on my podcast, and then I have a lot of moms who listen, and just moms being more informed, knowing what to look out for. And I mean, educating the parents, I think is a crucial step, right? Because we can't expect that the young kids are going to know exactly what to do when they feel these emotions and have these symptoms. But oh my God, I'm so proud of you. First of all, I know we just met, but it's like so beautiful to see a success story in this way. And it sounds like you've gone through a lot. And yeah,
you mentioned at the start of this podcast how I introduced myself to you when we first met and mentioned the BPD. I just want to say I appreciated you opening up about your mental health when we first met.
Oh.
You were very open, and I just so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I love that. I think you and I both, if nothing else, that's our gift we can share with the world. That it's like there's nothing to be ashamed about, because if you're helping one other person to feel like maybe they can be comfortable with, you know, what they were born with, and hopefully find resources and not be ashamed that that's part of who they are in a way, but not all of who they are, then I'm happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we just got to get the world to open up.
Let's do it. We got a big job ahead of us, but
it's about time.
Yeah, but my listeners out there hopefully will help to carry the message, and then yours too on Luminosity. So I also want to make sure that we can help people reach out to you or follow you, or how can people reach you, I guess is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, so they can find me on social media. Instagram is at Kevin G. Quinn. That's the same username for my TikTok as well. And then I have a Facebook, Kevin Quinn Official. I think that's all of it.
Did you just launch an album or launch a new single?
I did, yeah.
Tell us about that.
It's all about my journey in rehab, to be honest, and everything I went through. There was a piano at the rehab facility, and when I was supposed to go to bed for the nightly curfew, I would sort of stay out and I would tinker on the piano keys and start singing in the cafeteria. And they sort of let me, like the employees that were working there.
It must have sounded good then.
I don't know, maybe.
I don't know if they would have let you.
Maybe they were like, oh, this guy's like a pro. Like, I'll just let him keep playing. I don't know. But it was nice that they like let me have that time, and a time when I just needed to like be creative.
Where can we find that album?
It's on Apple Music, Spotify.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's all about, believe it or not, it's called Real Me. And the reason why it's called Real Me is because when I came out of rehab, I came out with a more solidified sense of self, and my sense of self and identity was no longer fragmented as it had been when I was struggling with BPD. So the real me in that sense is like the cohesive sense of self that I was reborn into.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I can't wait to download it. And
I hope you like it.
Yeah, I'm sure I will. I'm sure I will.
You have kids, right?
I do. Yeah.
They'll like it.
Okay.
It's skews a bit younger, but
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, listen, if it's not blippy, I'm gonna like it. If it's
clean, good pop music, like just a good time.
Okay.
Moms will like it if you're listening out there.
So it's pretty clean, like G-rated, PG related.
Yeah.
Okay, amazing.
I try to keep it like clean because I come from Disney Channel. They've conditioned me to do so.
Oh my God, we have to have a whole nother podcast on your experience with Disney, but I hear it was pretty good.
Yeah, it was great, actually.
It was great. That's good.
It's like one of the best times of my life.
Oh, yeah. I love that. I love that for you.
It was like going to it's like Disney high school. You know, like all the other Disney actors are your fellow students.
This guy's got an interesting life. That
you think so?
Sounds like everybody's dream.
It was a good time.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. Well, I don't want to keep you too long, and everybody yells at me because my podcast episodes are too long. So I'm going to cut it off, even though I have so many more questions. But thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me, and I hope that we can talk more and continue.
I would absolutely love it. Thank you so much for having me.